Okay, have you ever stopped to think about how much tech is woven into, like, fighting crime?
It's really everywhere you look once you start noticing it.
It is. It's wild. We're going deep today on how tech is reshaping the criminal justice system, and I think there are going to be some surprises along the way.
I think so too. We often think about like the flashy gadgets and gizmos when we hear tech.
Yeah,
But the real impact is so much more profound. The sheer volume of information that the justice system has to deal with is staggering.
right.
And technology helps manage it all in a way that just wouldn't be possible
So
otherwise.
it's not just about catching the bad guys, but doing it accurately,
Exactly.
reducing those wrongful convictions.
Absolutely. It's about ensuring justice is served properly. And, it's fascinating to look back in time a bit.
Yeah.
Those old police shows with the big clunky radios?
Oh, yeah.
Those were the height of technology at one
I
point.
know. It's crazy.
We've come such a long way from those simple tools to powerful databases like the FBI's NCIC, which helps law enforcement track criminals and stolen property across state lines. And now we're entering this whole new frontier with AI. It's really revolutionizing everything.
And you're so right. It's so easy to take something like a police radio for granted. Like, how did they even
I know.
function back in the day? But okay, let's talk about the tech that's like blowing our minds right now. Facial recognition
Oh,
software,
yeah.
drones, automatic license plate readers. It feels like we're living in a sci-fi movie.
It does. It really does. And these tools are generating incredible amounts of data. Think about automatic license plate readers for a second.
Okay.
They can scan thousands of plates per minute,
It's insane.
helping police track stolen vehicles or, identify suspects fleeing a crime scene.
It's amazing. But at what point does it become too much?
Yeah,
Where's the line between public safety and our own privacy? It's a little scary.
it's a really important question, and honestly, one that we need to be constantly asking and reevaluating as technology continues to advance.
I agree.
Take social media monitoring, for example.
Okay.
Law enforcement can use it to, track potential threats,
Right.
gather evidence, which can be really helpful in investigations.
Absolutely.
But it also raises concerns about overreach and the erosion of our privacy.
You're right. It's like a double-edged sword in a way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got like eyes in the sky and algorithms tracking our every move. It seems like it'd be pretty hard to get away with anything these days.
It's getting harder and harder.
I've even heard about systems that could like pinpoint the location of a gunshot in real time.
Yeah, gunshot detection systems are becoming more and more common, especially in cities. They use a network of sensors
Oh, wow.
to triangulate the sound of gunfire, and they can alert police within seconds.
That's amazing.
So it has the potential to save lives.
That's incredible. But I can also see how that kind of instant information could lead to some maybe like hasty decisions
Oh, for sure.
by law enforcement, maybe even based on like incomplete or inaccurate data.
You're right. Speed doesn't always equal accuracy.
Right.
And even with all of these advanced tools, the human element is still absolutely critical.
Absolutely.
We need officers who are trained to interpret the data, assess the situation, and make the right call under pressure.
Okay, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about forensics.
Okay.
We've all seen those crime shows.
The CSI effect.
Exactly. How much of that TV magic is actually real?
Hollywood definitely takes some liberties.
Of course.
But the truth is that forensic science has been completely transformed by technology. We're using DNA analysis to solve cold cases that seemed impossible.
Wow.
We can reconstruct crime scenes using VR
Really?
and even recover data from devices that are like totally destroyed.
That's mind-blowing.
It is. It's really incredible. And these tools have helped solve countless crimes that would have been impossible to crack even just a few decades ago.
So we can basically piece together a crime using like digital footprints, microscopic evidence, and even these virtual recreations.
It's pretty amazing.
But you mentioned earlier that human expertise is still super important.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it this way. Technology provides the pieces of the puzzle,
Okay.
the data, the evidence,
Right.
but it's still up to skilled investigators to, put those pieces together.
To analyze it and make sense of it.
Exactly. Human judgment and experience are essential for interpreting the data and, building a solid case.
So it's not just about having the coolest tech. It's about using it wisely.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to another question. How do we make sure all this incredible tech is being used ethical?
It's a huge question, and it requires ongoing dialogue and really careful consideration.
Yeah.
As technology keeps evolving, we need to make sure that our laws and guidelines can keep up.
I agree.
We need to be mindful of potential biases,
Right.
protect individual rights,
Yeah.
and make sure that technology serves justice, not the other way around.
This has been really eye-opening. It's so excited to see how tech could be used to solve crimes and keep our communities safe.
It is.
But you're right, there are some serious ethical considerations that we can't ignore.
For sure, this is a field that's constantly changing, and we need to be informed and engaged citizens to make sure this technology is being used responsibly and ethically.
Okay, so much to think about. Let's dive into some specific examples of how this tech is being used in different parts of the justice system. What else do we have in store?
Well, let's start by talking about how technology is being used in correction and rehabilitation. It's an area that often gets overlooked, but it's full of really fascinating innovations and challenges.
So we're talking about using tech not just to catch criminals, but to help rehabilitate them.
Yeah, it's kind of a different angle, isn't it?
It is. I hadn't really thought about that side of things.
It's an area where technology has huge potential, I think.
Okay, I'm all ears.
We often think of prisons as, places of punishment,
Right.
but what if we could use tech to make them more about genuine rehabilitation?
Okay, that's interesting. What kind of technology are we talking about?
Well, think about electronic monitoring devices, for example.
Okay.
I mean, they've been around for a while, but the technology has gotten so much more sophisticated.
In what way?
Well, now, instead of just tracking an offender's location,
Right.
they can actually collect data on their behavior, their movements, even their vital signs.
Wow, so we're not just making sure they're staying within certain boundaries, but we're getting information that can help us understand them better.
Exactly, and potentially even prevent them from, reoffending.
It's like we're trying to address the root of the problem.
Yeah, and it's not just about monitoring either. There are programs that use virtual reality now
Really?
to simulate real-world scenarios.
What kind of scenarios?
So, for example, let's say an offender struggles with anger management.
Okay.
They could use VR to practice de-escalation techniques,
Oh, wow.
but in a safe and controlled environment.
It's like giving them a chance to practice for the real world, but without the real world consequences.
Exactly. And these VR programs can be tailored to, their specific needs and challenges.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's all about making the rehabilitation process more effective. We're also seeing the development of these really sophisticated risk assessment tools.
Oh, tell me more about that.
They use algorithms to analyze tons of data
Okay.
and identify individuals who might be more likely to reoffend.
So instead of this one-size-fits-all approach to rehabilitation, we can actually start to create personalized plans that are targeted.
Exactly. It's about getting to the root causes of the behavior.
That sounds really promising.
It is, but like with any technology, there are always potential downsides.
Right, of course. What kind of downsides are we talking about?
Well, for example, with electronic monitoring, we have to be careful about over-surveillance.
Yeah, I could see that.
We don't want it to become too intrusive into people's lives.
It's that balance again.
Always between a public safety and individual privacy.
And what about the use of technology in the juvenile justice system? That seems like a really sensitive area.
It is. Kids are still developing. Their brains aren't fully formed yet.
Yeah?
We need to be extra cautious about how we use technology in those cases, I think.
What are some of the considerations there?
I mean, the focus with young people should always be on rehabilitation.
Yeah, giving them a second chance.
Exactly. And technology can definitely play a part in that.
How so?
Well, it can provide access to things like educational resources, mental health services, support networks.
Okay, so it's about giving them the tools they need to succeed.
Right. But we need to be careful that these tools aren't being used in a way that punishes them or stigmatizes them.
I see your point. It's not about labeling them, it's about helping them.
Right. It all comes back to how we're using the technology.
And the values we're embedding in it.
Exactly. And that leads to another important point. We need for collaboration.
Okay.
We need experts from all these different fields: technology, law enforcement, ethics, social work.
Right, it's not just a tech issue.
No, it's a societal issue. We need to make sure we're developing and using these technologies responsibly.
So it's a collective effort.
Absolutely. And that includes our listeners, too.
That's right.
We want everyone to stay informed, ask questions, and really engage in these conversations about the ethical side of things.
Yeah, it's our future that's at stake.
It really is. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about how technology is enhancing international cooperation in law enforcement.
Okay? Because crime doesn't stop at borders, right?
No, it doesn't. And technology is helping law enforcement agencies around the world share information and collaborate more effectively.
That makes sense, especially with things like cybercrime and terrorism becoming more global.
Exactly. It's more important than ever for law enforcement to be working together.
So how is technology actually facilitating that collaboration?
Well, one way is through these sophisticated databases and communication platforms
Okay.
that allow for real-time sharing of information about criminals, suspects, potential threats.
I can imagine that's super helpful.
It is. Think about Interpol, for example.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of them.
They connect law enforcement agencies in over 190 countries.
That's incredible.
They use technology to track stolen passports, share fingerprint data, coordinate investigations across borders.
It's like a global crime-fighting network, all powered by tech.
It is pretty amazing, right?
It is, but with all this sharing of information, Yeah, there are concerns about privacy and security. Could that information fall into the wrong hands?
That's a really important consideration, and it's why we need strong safeguards in place.
Like what kind of safeguards?
Things like robust encryption and strict access controls, clear protocols for data sharing.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about the rules around it.
Exactly. We need international agreements and legal frameworks to establish clear guidelines for, things like cross-border data sharing, extradition, the prosecution of international crimes.
It sounds complicated.
It is. It's about finding that balance between security and privacy in this interconnected world.
And that balance is constantly shifting.
It is, especially as technology keeps advancing. Speaking of which, let's talk about the future of criminal justice technology. What's coming next? What should we be paying attention to?
Okay, I'm ready for more mind-blowing tech. What's on the horizon?
Well, one area that's really generating a lot of buzz is the use of AI in predicting crime.
Whoa, hold on. Predicting crime?
I know, right?
Is that even possible?
It's still early days, but companies are already developing this predictive policing software.
How does that even work?
The idea is to use AI to analyze massive amounts of data.
Like what kind of data?
Crime statistics, social media, activity, weather patterns, you name it.
Wow.
To try to identify patterns and predict where and when crimes are likely to happen.
That sounds incredible and a little bit scary at the same time.
It is. It's definitely a powerful tool.
What are some of the potential issues with that?
We have to be really careful about relying too heavily on those predictions,
Okay.
especially if they're based on biased or incomplete data.
That makes sense.
Human judgment and oversight are still absolutely crucial.
Right, we can't just let the algorithms make all the decisions.
Exactly. We need to make sure these systems are being used ethically and responsibly.
It's like we're stepping into a science fiction movie where we can predict the future.
I know, it's pretty wild.
But what about the present? What are some of the technologies being used right now to improve transparency and accountability in the justice system?
Oh, there's some really interesting things happening there. Body-worn cameras are becoming much more common.
Right.
They provide valuable evidence in police encounters.
Yeah.
And permit accountability. There are also platforms being developed to track the progress of cases
Okay.
through the court system.
That's interesting.
So it makes the whole process more transparent and accessible to the public.
That's great. Transparency and accountability are so important for building trust in the system.
Absolutely. And technology can play a big role in that.
For sure. What else?
Another exciting development is the use of blockchain technology.
Oh, wow. Blockchain, like cryptocurrency.
Kind of. But in this case, it's being used to secure evidence and prevent tampering.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Imagine a system where every piece of evidence, DNA samples, witness statements, crime scene photos, it's all recorded on this digital ledger that can't be altered.
So it's like tamper-proof evidence.
Exactly. It could really revolutionize the way we handle evidence.
That's amazing blockchain for justice.
Right. It has the potential to make the system so much more reliable and trustworthy.
Wow. So we've gone from police radios to blockchain in one conversation.
I know, it's a lot to take in.
It is. We've covered so much in this deep dive, from the history of criminal justice technology to the latest cutting-edge stuff and all the ethical questions in between.
It's definitely a complex and rapidly evolving field.
It is. But I think it's clear that technology is transforming the justice system in some really profound ways.
Absolutely. And this conversation is far from over.
It really is mind-blowing when you think about how far we've come from those old police radios to AI that can, like, predict where crime might happen.
I know, it's a lot.
It's wild. And it makes you realize that tech is only going to keep changing the justice system even more in the future.
It definitely will. It's a constant evolution.
So for those of us who aren't like tech experts or lawyers, how do we make sure this tech is being used responsibly?
That's a great question. I think the most important thing is to stay informed.
Okay.
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, learn about how this technology is actually being used.
Yeah, be in the know.
The more you know, the better equipped you will be to advocate for responsible use.
Okay, so knowledge is power, but how do we put that knowledge into action?
It can be as simple as asking questions.
Okay.
If your local police department starts using a new technology, don't be afraid to ask how it works, what kind of data it's collecting, what safeguards are in place to protect people's rights.
So challenge those assumptions, demand that transparency.
Exactly. Make sure our elected officials are being held accountable.
It's about being an active participant.
It is. And, technology is constantly evolving.
Right, it changes so fast.
What seems cutting edge today might be outdated tomorrow. So we need to stay informed and engaged to make sure that technology serves justice, not the other way around.
I think that's a really good point. This whole deep dive has really made me think. It's exciting to see how technology can be used to solve crimes and keep us safe.
Yeah, it has huge potential.
But it's also a good reminder that we have to be careful about protecting our rights and freedoms.
Well said. The future of criminal justice technology isn't set in stone. It's up to all of us to shape it in a way that aligns with our values.
That's a powerful thought. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final question to consider.
Okay?
If you could design, like, the perfect crime-fighting system, what role would technology play? What would you do to protect individual rights and make sure that justice is served fairly?
A question worth pondering, that's for sure, because ultimately the future of criminal justice is in our hands.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into criminal justice technology. It's been a fascinating conversation. We'll be back next time with another topic that will hopefully spark your curiosity. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.